Hey there, sunflowers. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to do something very, very personal with you. I am going to take you through a guided tour of some of my parts. That sounds wrong, so let me explain further. But first of all, I just want to say this video is very kindly sponsored by Skillshare. I love the platform. I know many of you know how much I advocate for the platform, so it's very lovely to be able to have another little sponsorship with them. So I'll talk to you more about the Skillshare platform later, what you can expect and how you can get involved. I'm there doing stuff, learning stuff, and it's all very gorgeous and very rich and very interesting. So I'll look forward to getting into that with you in the middle of this vid at some point. So, okay, I'm going to take you through a guided tour, right? So a lot of you will know what internal family systems is. It's a therapeutic construct. And for anyone who doesn't know what it is, I'm just going to be really, really brief, okay? Because this is not a video about internal family systems necessarily, but this is the closest thing in psychology that I can think that this is linked to, right? So internal family systems is this idea that you are an inherent self, but that your self is subdivided into different parts. And in therapy with internal family systems technique, what you would do with a therapist is you would tend to identify which part of you has come to the front. And those parts are characterized by different motivations and different personality traits. And sometimes they are linked to different parts of your personal history where those different sort of sub-personalities were formed, essentially. So internal family systems can include working with the inner child, which I know a lot of you do. A lot of people that watch my channel are really into inner child work. And I myself am a huge advocate of inner child work in the therapeutic setting and also in the spiritual and self-developmental settings as well. And the inner child may be divided into different parts, like the wounded child and the excited child and the witch child or whatever, right? However many different subdivisions of the inner child you feel like you work with. It could be the inner child in accordance with your relationship with your dad, the inner child in one particular home that you lived in growing up, and the inner child in the home you lived in after that, right? So you can kind of see the different forms that your inner child takes, and your therapist or you yourself might work on identifying each one of those sets of motivations or those sets of characteristics. In internal family systems, usually when you start to identify your different parts and you name them and you say, okay, this is a part of me, this is the angry part of me, this is the escapist part of me, this is the overblown romantic part of me, whatever it might be, usually you would be encouraged to identify what kind of role that part of you plays. Is it an exile? Is it a firefighter? Or is it a manager? I think those are the three kind of categories that you're encouraged to put your parts into. I don't work with that. I think that's kind of reductive. I was just talking to a client about this the other day, that long before I had ever heard of something called internal family systems, I was working with my parts. I have known for a very long time that there are different parts of me that are distinct parts of me, and they have sometimes paradoxical motivations, and some of them are present in certain situations and some of them are more present in other situations. And I've always been aware that I've got to love those parts and integrate those parts, or at least I've been aware of that since like my early 20s when I started to really do my deep inner work, right? I've been aware that those parts of me need to be understood and embraced, and that they cannot be repressed, because when they are repressed or shamed or pushed away, that's when they tend to be problematic for me. Whereas if I just identify them and I try to accept them and I try to understand and work with them, then they have less of a tendency to go haywire and wreak havoc on my life, right? And that's part of what integration is just witnessing that you are all of these things. We also do this with identifying that every archetype is within ourselves and figuring out which archetypes are more prominent with us and which are not so prominent, or which we would like to connect with more. So I say all of this to say that today I'm going to take you through my parts. I'm not using necessarily the internal family systems technique or framework because, as I said, I don't categorize my parts into these different sort of ideas of what role they play. But I have long worked with the notion that I'm divided into many different parts, and they are all under the umbrella of my self with a capital S, right? And the way that I tend to see it, the way that I explain it to people, is that myself with a capital S, Kellyanne Maddox, at the age that I am now, with all of the information that I have now about myself and the world and everything, I see myself as the driver of my life. I see myself with a capital S as the most up-to-date version of me, and the version of me that has perhaps the most clarified intentions for what I want, what I don't want, and everything else. It's the most conscious and potentially unbiased, I guess, version of me. My parts are in the bus that I am driving. So I myself am driving the bus, which is my life, my decisions, my actions. My parts are in the back of the bus. They get to have a say on where we go, and they might actually have a very impassioned idea of where we're going to go or how I should be driving, but none of them have a license. At no point should they really be driving the bus. That's kind of the way I see it. That's not an internal family system thing. It's just something that I tend to consider when one of my parts, one of my kind of subdivided shards of self, if you will, is really activated and really coming to the front. I want to respect that voice inside me. I want to understand where that voice comes from, but at no point do I want to allow it to completely take over, because I want to bring my up-to-date perspective from the version of me that I am now. I feel like most people that I just said that to who are watching this video are going to understand what I mean. So without further ado, I'm going to talk you through some of the main parts that I've noticed within myself. Some of them I have mentioned on the channel before. Some of you will remember Mc Woowoo from back in the day. I'm definitely going to get into Mc Woowoo today. Every single part that I discuss in this video is going to have a timestamp connected to it down below. So you can go through and take a guided tour of some of my most well understood and frequently identified parts of self. I would recommend that if you do not work with your parts, or you don't know much about internal family systems, if that's something that it sounds like you're more interested in, you can definitely check that out because it gives you a good framework. If you do work with different parts of yourself, inner child, inner adolescent, inner artist, inner miserable bitch, whatever it might be, like your different parts of self, if you do work with them, I would love to know down below, do you identify with any of my parts? Have you watched this video and thought, actually, that is a part of me as well. I have something that is similar to that and I hadn't witnessed it before. I would love to know. And I would love to know how long you have identified different parts within yourself, different sort of subcategories of self. And are there any that you are currently working with, or any that you would like to share with us or explain about? I think the comments section can become really, really interesting when it goes in that direction. So without further ado, let me take you through a little guided tour of some of my parts. I'm going to talk about the light and the shadow with each of them and the way that they kind of play out in my life. The first prominent part of myself that I want to share with you is part of myself that I refer to as the healer or the destined healer. And this is the part of me that is very, very much linked to what I do for a living, being a spiritual counselor, being a tarot reader, being a witchcraft mentor and all that stuff. But it's also connected to how I relate to people and, of course, how I see myself. I think all of my parts are somewhat connected to how I see myself. I've got some notes here for each of my different parts, and I will be reading from my notes so that I give you a full sense of the light and shadow of each of these parts without hopefully going into too much unnecessary detail or tangents, because I could really tangent you halfway across the fucking galaxy in this one, darlings, and I could make this into a 6-hour video, and I'm going to try very hard not to do that. So, the Destined Healer. The light side of this particular part of me is that I am able to hold space for other people, and I'm able to make a genuine difference in people's lives. And that is a skill that I've worked to hone and that I think is positive, and other people find it positive too, clearly, because it's what I do for a living. And I have a lot of repeat clients. Thank you to all my repeat clients. So I'm sure I'm doing something right. And a lot of good feedback. So I also have empathy for people going through shitty times. I notice when someone's going through shitty times. I take the time to genuinely know people. I accept their flaws. And I know the importance of listening to people's stories and helping people to feel comfortable with who they are. I don't expect people to rush through their process. And I actually am not afraid of their process. And I think my destined healer, the sort of conscious side or the light side of my destined healer, is that part of me that knows that not everybody can hold that kind of strong, unafraid space for someone who is doing really deep personal work, especially things like shadow work, inner child work, messy work. And so because I know that I have that skill, I seek to use it, because I know that there are many people walking around in this world who have tried to talk about their messy shit and they've been turned away, they've been mocked, they've been dismissed because people are afraid to talk about that. So I try to bring my healer archetype to the front as much as possible and let it lead in conversation, because I know it can be of use, you know. I am not afraid of seeing the reality of heartbreak, pain, loss, bereavement, etc. The shadow of the Destined Healer, okay, is overgiving, which I've spoken about on the channel before, and I will definitely leave a video down below about overgiving and about the instinct towards fixing people that you might find interesting. It's quite an emotional video. I filmed it during a very emotional time in my life. I probably should go back to talking a little bit about overgiving, but that's the offering that I have for you if you want more on that. I also think that my healer, or my Destined Healer, in shadow, that part of me definitely has a problem with thinking that I am the only one that can probably help. Therefore it's my duty, which feeds into the overgiving, but it's also an ego stroke, right? When you're healer, when there's a big part of you that is a healer and is a capable healer, capable helper, right? Then you also get an ego stroke from seeing how effectual you can be, and that can make you lose your sense of how involved you ought to be in someone's stuff and how much they maybe even need you to be involved in their stuff, you know? I think that because I'm quite good at helping people to reach breakthroughs or helping people to feel safe, it makes me too determined to prove my ability. So in the shadow side of the healer, there can be a lot of ego involved. I definitely will offer to help people with things that I really should be helping myself with as well. So the healer can become a point of distraction or procrastination where I feel like I've really done something because I've helped somebody with something, but actually that's the exact thing that I really should be getting on with myself. So definitely that's a problem. And I think also my healer part is the part that mind reads. So I do tend to find myself imagining or trying to figure out what people are thinking and feeling, what their needs are, what their fears are. And I think I can get overly confident that I'm capable of doing that. I try very hard not to do that in my professional life. I always ask, I always clarify, I always paraphrase back to someone. But in my personal life, it can get a little bit more dicey. When I'm really close friends with someone, I might think I know a thing or two more than I actually do about what they need or what they're going through. So that's kind of the light and the shadow side of this healer or Destined Healer part of me. And the reason that I use the word Destined Healer is because it feels such like a serious drive within me that, oh my God, that is what I'm supposed to do, you know? And that can work for the positive, but it can also work for the not so positive as well. The hopeless romantic, my darlings. Yes, I have a hopeless fucking romantic inside me. I think many of you already know that this is the case. And the hopeless romantic is the part of me that has a true belief in the goodness and the kindness and the depth of human beings for the most part, you know. I'm definitely not what you would call a misanthropist. I have my moments, but essentially I don't have that deep feeling of distrust for the human race. I have actually the opposite thing. I have great faith in the potential of the human race to get its shit together and do the right thing on an individual level and on a collective level. I have a love of giving and receiving and celebrating and romantic gestures, both platonic and in terms of like more sexual intimacy or romantic intimacy as well. I treat platonic relationships, in fact, with as much care and gravitas as the romantic ones. And I love that feeling of mental intimacy, and I love that feeling of a closeness that's been created and a bond that's been shared and a dedication to each other and a feeling of the growth of a relationship, the depth of a relationship, the stages of a relationship. And I do idealize and romanticize my relationships with people. I definitely lionize them. I think they're cinematic in nature. I think that they are the stuff of legend. I love talking. One of the things I love talking about most with the people in my life is the lore of us, L-O-R-E, right? Every single friendship, every single significant connection has its lore that's attached to it. And that will involve like in-jokes that we have, special things that we did, the general timeline of the really important conversations that we had, the breakthroughs that we had together as friends or partners. So the hopeless romantic in me really lionizes and iconifies, is that the word? the theme of the relationship in my life, right? For sure. And that's what I mean by the hopeless romantic. I am romantic about people, and I'm romantic about specific people, and I'm romantic about love, and I'm romantic about friendship. The shadow of the hopeless romantic, of course, is giving people the benefit of the doubt one too many times. I definitely can let people sweet talk me. I can let people convince me. It's not a very common thing, but it definitely happened with my last major romantic relationship. And that caused me great damage. And I now have spent a lot of time, over a year, well over a year, working on that. I started working on that in 2020, and it's now 2023 at the time of filming this. And I feel that I have only just come to truly understand the different characteristics of the relationship I had with that person, whom I really allowed to lead me fully down the garden path. And I have come to take the lessons from that. And I'm not as afraid of that anymore. But there definitely is, within the shadow side of my hopeless romantic, the willingness to believe what people tell me about themselves, about their intentions, and about what they feel about me. And actually, long after their actions have ceased to match up with their words, I am still listening to their words and trying to have faith in their words and trying to trust them and trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. And actually, there's no need for that. I could have shut the door long ago and nobody would have objectively blamed me. So the shadow of my hopeless romantic is definitely that sense that I will allow people to overstep my boundaries or feed me bullshit. And that definitely has happened. I think the other thing about the hopeless romantic that is a problem, that is a shadow for me, is that in the midst of lionizing and glorifying my relationship with somebody, I might fail to see the cracks in it. I might fail to see something that I need to do or something that I'm doing too much. And I definitely think that I can really make someone into a symbol. Not necessarily project onto them. I suppose it's kind of projection in a way, but just like when I admire someone so much and I love them so much and they're so much a deep part of my life, I can be surprised when they do something that doesn't fit in with the building blocks of what I've put together for them, which is quite the beautiful palatial castle type of thing, you know, where it's like really big time love, big time admiration. The shadow of my hopeless romantic does not want those people in my life to actually show themselves as human. I think sometimes that's a problem. And I become very disappointed and very, very hurt when somebody behaves out of character or behaves out of pocket or is generally a bit of an arse hat, but in a way that is human, in a way that we all can be from time to time. It really shocks me, you know? So it's interesting. Someone who's trying to pull the wool over my eyes can do, but someone who's just trying to go about their business and be human, but I've decided that they're superhuman, I mean, that causes issues. And I think finally with the hopeless romantic, there is just this sense that I can give too much to relationships and I can put too much, I can invest so much in them. And in the past, it's been to the detriment of myself. But these days in my life, I definitely have a hopelessly romantic relationship with myself. And I think that's the only place in life where it can really pay to be ceaselessly, hopelessly romantic is with yourself. One part of me that is interesting, one part of my inner child that comes up quite a lot is something that I call Daddy's Princess, aka 6-year-old me. And this is a very big part of me that comes up that I notice and I've worked with for a very long time, like years. For years now, I've been saying, oh, that's 6-year-old me. Oh, you know what? That's 6-year-old me coming up. That's Daddy's Princess. And so I've known for a long time that I work with that part, and my therapist is very aware of that part, and we discuss when she comes up. So Daddy's Princess is confidently showing people my skills and enjoying compliments that I receive when I show my skills, because Daddy's Princess is really the part of me that wants to seek validation. When I was 6, I wanted to seek it from my emotionally distant and very hard to please father, who dealt in conditional love only. But now it could be whoever, right? Sometimes I want that validation. So the light side of Daddy's Princess or 6-year-old me is that I'm not afraid of having an audience and I'm not afraid of shining in front of people, because really that was a huge form of emotional currency with my father growing up, which made me very, very good at it. Aside from the fact that I am naturally theatrical and I naturally don't mind a crowd, I naturally don't mind an audience, and I don't mind excelling in public. I have my issues with it, but essentially I'm not afraid of it, right? But on top of that, I needed to do it a lot of the time to get what I needed from my paternal caregiver, sorry. So I'm not afraid of that now. I'm very encouraging also towards other people when they want to exhibit their showmanship. You know, I'm not afraid of competition, and I actually love it when people are exhibiting themselves a bit more. I trust that I'm allowed to be brilliant, and so are others. That is very 6-year-old me. I want everyone to be happy to do the things that they want, to dance around in a fairy outfit or invent a song or whatever they want to say, do a speech. I love that, you know, I'm very encouraging. I think my 6-year-old me is also the part of me that is like Jo from Little Women when she starts running the theatre group with her sisters and Laurie. That's me. I'm like, now your part, now you come in, you know. I'm like a little orchestra for human confidence. And I like doing funny impressions and recounting stories and telling jokes. The shadow side of 6-year-old me, aka Daddy's Princess, is obviously that I have an inflated desire sometimes for approval and praise when I show my skill or put my creations into the world. There's nothing wrong with wanting acknowledgement, but I'm saying that the desire that I have can be inflated. And that's not me, that's not myself. I know as myself with a capital S that that is not necessary. The degree of approval that I want comes from one of my parts, and it comes from that 6-year-old me. 6-year-old me can sometimes feel that I'm only worthy if I'm performing or excelling in some way. And she feels particularly sensitive about critique, especially from people that are close to her. And she needs a long process to cope with that. You know, sometimes people think I'm not okay if I'm not in performance mode. They equate my outgoing performing character with my level of mental well-being. And this is because of 6-year-old me and the way she kind of hypes up the fact that she's okay because she's performing. When actually sometimes I am actually okay. I just don't feel like fucking putting on a show, you know? So it means people also miss the opportunity to be there for me because they think if I'm putting on a show, if I'm putting on a face, I must be okay. But that's sometimes not the case at all. The 6-year-old part of me is kind of somewhat connected to another part of me that I have identified. And I started identifying this part of me in about 2020. And I realized that it was distinct from 6-year-old me. I've spoken before on the channel about how I was identified as having particular skills when I was young. So skills with things like acting, skills with the English language. I had a particular proficiency for reading and writing at a young age. I was kind of singled out as being a child that was special in some ways, right? Now, that can have a particular effect on the ego, and it can have a particular effect on the psyche. I know that a lot of people who were never singled out for being special in any way as children, and they did not feel seen and they did not feel like their potential was identified, are probably going to balk a little bit at me saying this, but it is really also quite harmful for a child to be singled out as brilliant in some way. That creates its own problems as well. And it creates problems with siblings, and it just... There's an issue as you get older and you feel like you failed in some way because you were never going to measure up to what all the adults were telling you were going to be. It had an effect on me, you know? So being identified for your brilliance in childhood is not all it's fucking cracked up to be, let me tell you that. So there is this part of me, and I've called it the Wunderkind, okay? And that is the part of me that responds very strongly from the place of having my capabilities marked out and praised from an early age. That had an effect on me. And so there is a part of me that is operating from that place. So the light side of my Wunderkind, I have a stray hair and it's driving me crazy. There we go. The light side of my Wunderkind is that I do believe in my skills and my strengths most of the time, and I'm motivated to improve through disciplined practice. Because obviously, when I had my skills identified, I was like, oh my God, I need to do something about this. I need to own this, right? I'm good at focusing on my potential, and I want to see more of my potential. I'm not necessarily afraid of it. I like preserving non-negotiable time to get better at things, and I don't think that's selfish, and I don't think it's pointless. That's the part of me that is my Wunderkind, right? That's my Wunderkind energy, where I'm like, I show promise at this and I want to show more. I'm going to apply myself. I get to apply myself. Even if it doesn't make me any money, even if nobody else understands it, fuck that shit. I get to apply myself, right? So that's my Wunderkind energy. I have a feeling that I have a right to work on my projects, and I know that I do not need to hide my talent or my strength to make others feel comfortable. The shadow of the Wunderkind is the feeling that I'm wasting my time if I'm not striving to improve in some way. If I can't show people or show myself the adequate evidence that I've been doing something to build on my character or build on my talent, I feel that's a problem. Now, to be honest with you, that's a very, very prominent feeling with late stage capitalism, with the idea that you have to be a productive cog in a machine or else what is your worth? But I think for me, it also comes from that Wunderkind part of me, the part of me that was just waking up to the fact that the adults expected me in particular to do something grand, right? So that was a very high pressure time in my life. It was very exciting, but it was also very overwhelming. And I think I've kept that with me. I definitely find that with my Wunderkind, I have some competitiveness at times, some insecurity and some toxic comparison. That's definitely the shadow side. The fear that I'm not doing enough, that I'm not going to achieve as much as people expect me to. Not giving myself credit for what I've already done is definitely the shadow of the Wunderkind, because the Wunderkind is the part of me that really feels like I always need to be excelling and feeling like I'm not worthwhile if I'm not exceptional in the field that I've chosen, or even in the conversation that I'm having, or even in the outfit that I've chosen. Like, you know, that Wunderkind in shadow is a tough part sometimes. Honey bunnies, you are now part way through a video that is all about my internal world and the discovery that I have done when it comes to my inner workings. And as you can imagine, as someone who does this kind of work, I am very interested in different tools and materials that will help me with my personal growth and self-care. Skillshare is the sponsor of this video. They're an amazing online learning platform and they offer courses in all kinds of different things, from photography and graphic design through to wellness and healthy living. There's a whole different plethora of things that will really help you to improve your world when it comes to self-discovery, self-care, but also business, creativity, social media, and all that good stuff. I want to talk to you today about a couple of courses that I wanted to mention. If you're watching this video, it's likely that you'll be really into this kind of thing over on Skillshare. The first course I want to recommend is Modern Journaling by Audrey Moon. This is a course that will help you with setting up your journal, considering different supplies, journaling lessons to help you develop a stronger practice. I discovered a lot of my different parts that I'm describing to you now in this video through journaling. A lot of it was through writing stuff down that I observed about myself, and my journaling practice was really key to that process. And then I shared my journaling work with my therapist and I read over it, and it kind of really helped me to understand more about my different parts. So there are lots of different journaling courses on Skillshare for you. Modern Journaling is just one of them that I really rated. I also wanted to mention an amazing course by Dan Leo called the Intimate Self-Portrait. It's a self-portraiture photography course that talks you through not only the technical stuff, like capturing great images with good lighting and composition, but also it really taps into the deeper benefits of self-portraiture, like being more comfortable in your body and discovering more about yourself through the art of photographing yourself. I found this course really interesting and it's also really visually beautiful. If you would like to try Skillshare free for a month, just be one of the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description of this video. Go on over, try the resources for free, see if you like it. If you're someone that spends a lot of time on YouTube, or you spend a lot of time looking up, different self-development materials online, things to help yourself, Skillshare could be a really good use of money. It's really affordable for a month-to-month sort of wealth of resources, I would say. So go on over there, be one of the first 1,000 people to click the link. It helps the channel when you do that as well. Back to the video. I have a part called The Angry Teenager, aka 15-year-old me. This is also a very, very, very prominent part that I work with in my therapy and my journaling, and I am very good at identifying her when she comes up. And this is also one of the first parts of me that I witnessed and I started to work with, and I started to do some healing work with her. The light side of my angry teenager is my love of artistic and spiritual practices whilst in solitude, because when I was a 15-year-old, that was my form of escape. That was my feeling that I was going to be okay, despite my turbulent home life, my scary home life, and my difficulties at school. A deep loyalty towards my loved ones and a willingness to speak up for them and fight for them. That really came through strongly in my teen years, where I came out as bisexual and I hung out with other outcasts and I got my first girlfriend and I got very fucking political. So all of that stuff combined so that it was the first time in my life that I was like, I will stand and I will fight, you know, and that stayed with me. I have that, like, that sort of yappy fucking dog mentality almost. I have a fearless willingness to be different, to be weird, to be a freak and an outcast, and to know that this does not make me less than other people. And I have lots of ways to comfort myself when I need it. I had to be very good at self-soothing as a teenager, and that really comes through when I feel that part of me that is the 15-year-old me coming up. The angry teenage me has a lot of shadow stuff. For one, that part of me is very distrustful of people, on guard, even when people have given me no reason to be. The 15-year-old part of me anticipates violence, cruelty, or unpredictable situations that might harm me. So she is the part of me that is very hypervigilant and constantly pretty much halfway convinced at any given time that shit's going to kick off, right? So she's very quick to anger because of that. She's quick to lash out. She can get very defensive. I know when I'm being really defensive and lashing out that 9 times out of 10, that's actually not what my self with a capital S wants to do. And it's not what I think is right. It's coming from her, and she needs to be soothed in that moment because she's having a very different reaction. That part of me is having a different reaction to the part of me that's thinking from myself as I am now in my late 30s, right? I think that my 15-year-old me does expect that people might bully me or exclude me, even when I don't have proof of that. Again, there's a lot of assumptions. 15-year-old me makes a lot of fucking assumptions based on things that she's experienced, because she hasn't experienced any of the better stuff yet. She's experienced a lot of shit and a lot of exclusion and some violence and some intimidation. But she hasn't had enough experiences like I've had now of finding my people and running with my freak flag flying and like all of this beautiful stuff, the raves I've been to, the gigs I've been to. She had a little taste of that, but she had a lot of horrible shit going on. So I have to kind of remind her that her perspective is not the truth, you know? She does make assumptions as well about people who are more mainstream or kind of like, you know, beige, kind of basic. I mean, look, I'm just saying it how it is, okay? That is one of the shadows of my 15-year-old self. I'd be very interested to know in the comments, guys, actually, who works with their teenage self and what the fuck are they like? What light and shadow does your inner teenager bring around for you? How do you know when they are driving? I have a part of me called the Sovereign Bitch. It's a good name for a band, actually, the Sovereign Bitch. The Sovereign Bitch is the part of me that is completely into non-conformity and able to inspire other people to not conform as well. Sovereign Bitch is the part of me that said I wasn't going to have kids when I was 14 and still stuck to it now in my late 30s. Sovereign Bitch is the part of me that doesn't want to get married, doesn't want to cohabit. Sovereign Bitch is the part of me that invented my own business and said, these are the things I want to do to make money, and actually like pulled it together to make that happen. Sovereign Bitch is the part of me that walks out the door wearing whatever the fuck I like. You know, so you see what I mean, okay? Like, I am not restricted by socially enforced choices. That part of me, impervious to peer pressure, not needing permission to be who I am, you know, and I tend to not want to jeopardize my sovereignty. So whenever I feel like my sovereignty might be being compromised, that part of me, the sovereign bitch, will come up and make herself known. I think that the sovereign bitch is the part that waits to find out if my sovereignty will be respected before I go too far into something, whether it is a business collaboration, whether it's a book contract, whether it's a relationship, anything, right? So she's very protective of my sovereignty. The shadow side of the sovereign bitch is, that's the part of me, again, that is quite judgmental of anyone who seems to be blindly conforming to what they've been taught. Even if they say they're happy with their choices, the sovereign bitch is skeptical. And I don't like that. I think that's a shadow, because I think we should take people at their word that they want what they said they wanted for their life. But the sovereign bitch is like, how can you want this? This is what you were trained to want. So there's a judgmentalism there that I work with in my shadow. Sovereign bitch definitely feels superior to those who took a more normal path. Again, this is not me. When we look at our parts, we don't have to feel shame that like, oh my God, that's me. It's not myself, like my complete capital S self. I can identify it as a subpersonality. It's its own entity, and I can see when it's at work. And because I can see when it's at work, I can stop it in its tracks and go, hey, no, we're not going to be judging. No, that's not okay. Like, I get what you feel and I understand where you're coming from, but that's not right. That's not fair, right? So I can do that. I can work with my sovereign bitch in shadow. Sovereign bitch definitely quickly assumes that certain people won't vibe with her. She's not open to people's nuances because their life choices make her lose curiosity about them. And again, I go in and I correct that, because I have many, many, many beautiful, interesting conversations with people who took wildly, vastly different life paths to me and actually are far more interesting objectively in the end than I am, to be honest. I'm pretty plain Jane in comparison to some of the people I've spoken to who look on the surface to have a more conventional life. I learned that from what I do for a living. But I definitely think that my sovereignty can feel confronting to others, and I might struggle to be sensitive to that. And that's definitely sovereign bitch in shadow. Sovereign bitch in shadow doesn't give a fuck how she makes other people feel. And actually, my integrated self leads more from a place of compassion on that and a place of like managing how I make people feel and being sensitive. Sovereign bitch in shadow doesn't care. And I notice when she's in shadow in that way, and I'm like, oh, I need to deal with that. I have a lone wolf in me, darlings, definitely. The part of me that's able to deeply enjoy and even need time in solitude. The part of me that enjoys talking to myself. I'm interested in myself, you know. I have a damn good time with myself. I don't always need company or conversation. I can live independently without dealing with too much loneliness or neediness. I don't rely on others to make an event special or to help me to enjoy it. So the lone wolf part of me will come out a lot when I might be feeling like I do need someone or something. Lone wolf, when it's operating consciously, is the part of me that's like, come on, you can boss this shit. You are not alone. You are in your own company, you know? I can leave if I'm not having a good time. I don't need others to escort me or change their plans to accommodate me, really. I can always find a way to amuse myself when I'm alone. And I respect when other people need to be lone wolves for a while. I don't take it personally because I relate to it. I actually find it quite a relief when someone in my life that I spend a lot of time with says they just need to be alone. I get that, you know. But when my lone wolf is in shadow, I sometimes use that part of my nature as a defense, because I think I'm afraid that if I do invite someone to do something with me, they won't accept the invitation, or they won't think that they had as much fun as they should have done. So there's definitely an insecurity there that makes me lean into my lone wolf energy and be like, well, I don't need anyone to go. I'm not going to invite anyone. I don't need anyone. And actually, it's a defense. I do want someone there sometimes, and that's okay, you know? I think I run away from the fear of being hurt or disappointed by others sometimes, like if I let them into my life too much. And so the lone wolf, again, can be this kind of defensive barrier. And I lionize my lone wolf. I'm like, I'm a lone wolf. But actually, sometimes it's just this fear that if I let this particular person in, or I let them in more regularly, that they're going to see that I'm not that great, or I'm going to see that they're not that great, or we're going to see that we don't vibe. And so the lone wolf becomes a shield, you know? I think that I think that I would rather be a lone wolf sometimes than have to compromise my vision by factoring other people in, you know. I want everything my own way, in other words. That's a really problematic part of the lone wolf, you know. I think I like to be in my own head sometimes. I like to confirm my own biases. I like to listen to my own opinions. So if I don't have others around, I can just get on with what the fuck I'm doing. When really, collaboration and interaction on certain things that I feel very steadfast on can be good for the soul. It can help me see another way of doing something. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to this part of myself. Please don't judge me. Okay, but there is a part of me that I refer to as the tank. Okay? In English slang, my darlings, in British slang, a tank is someone who can keep fucking going until everybody else has dropped and a tank is still going. Otherwise referred to as an ox, I guess. But usually a tank is someone who, like, when you're talking about partying, or you're talking about going to excess, you're talking about decadence, you're talking about someone who can just keep fucking going, they would be described as a tank. And when it comes to my Dionysian part of myself, I'm a tank. I'm a tank, baby. I love to party. I love to party. I love to stay up all night. I love to go to festivals. I love to do the festival to death when I'm there. I love excess. I love excess. I love psychedelic experiences. I love dancing. I love meeting people. It's a big part of me. And so the tank has come up a few times in my therapy. This is where I identified it. I was like, this part of me. And my therapist was like, what should we call that part of you? And I was like, the tank. The tank is the part of me that has this very deep love, this untamed love for joy and earthly pleasure, which is infectious to other people. It inspires them to let go as well and have a good time. It's my ability to self-medicate and heal by opening my heart to good times with good people. The part of me that witnesses that sometimes I just need to have fun. You know, it's a desire to live before I die. It's that part of me that has a refusal to let judgments of others affect my free choice to live as a hedonistic, raving outlaw. You can tell that I really love this part of me. We haven't got to the shadow bit of it yet. The shadow bit of it's bad, okay? But you can tell that I really love this lighter part of it. I don't reject hedonism. I don't feel ashamed of wanting to have a good time. I daringly approach new experiences and new connections. But the shadow of the tank, oh, the shadow. Yeah. Shadow basically is, I go to excess and it doesn't always lead to the Palace of Wisdom. William Blake, yes, okay, road of excess leads to the Palace of Wisdom. Honey, not every time, you know. I deal with sadness after a good time is over, and I'm sometimes unwilling to go back to reality. And we'll get more into my relationship with reality later in the video. But I definitely feel also this egoic need sometimes to go hard or go home. I can be exaggeratedly Dionysian when I need to rest or go more slowly because I've overly identified with that Dionysian part of me. I see it as me. That, you know what, the tank is one of the parts of me that I mistake for myself most often. Yes, it is a very big part of me, but it's not me. I can put it down. I don't have to live and die by it. But for some reason, my ego is so affectionate towards this tank part of me that's like, party, just let's go wild, come back to mine. We'll put the lava lamps on. Come on, let's go for a walk on the beach, darling. It's only 8 a.m. Yeah, that part of me. I just love her. She's a hoot, you know? But at the end of the day, she also has an unwillingness sometimes to see the link between mental and physical strength and the desire to party. You know, there is a risk of sleep deprivation. There is a risk of not being mentally grounded enough for someone with my mental health diagnosis. So I have to find the balance for sure. There is a risk of prioritizing fun over my responsibilities that need my attention. And FOMO, I think, makes me feel guilty if I do go into party mode and sad if I don't go into party mode, right? So fear of missing out makes me go to something or arrange something or go too hard with something when I feel like maybe I could have, you know, held back on that occasion. But if I completely hold back, then sometimes I'll feel like, oh, that was a good time, then I didn't go, you know. Oh, the tank. On the opposite end of the tank is the ascetic or the Anchoress, okay? An Anchoress is like, you know, a nun from the medieval time that just shut herself away with an apple and the Bible, right? And just got down with JC. Okay, that kind of shit. Or the ascetic, someone who lives in very simple circumstances, focusing on just like, you know, religious or spiritual lines of inquiry, okay? So sometimes I call it the ascetic, sometimes I call it the Anchoress, sometimes I refer to this part of me as the retreat junkie. But basically, it's the part of me that seeks simplicity and abstaining from decadence and just focusing on being healthy and being quiet and having the discipline to step away from reckless hedonism. So it's the pendulum swing back towards this other side. And you can see that they're two extremes. The tank and the Anchoress or the ascetic are two extremes, okay? I think that when I'm in Anchoress mode, I'm utilizing the strength that comes from being in an orchestrated kind of spiritual solitude. And I'm taking pleasure in the simple things. I'm not fearing the return to order and the reduction of chaos and complication. I'm witnessing how thrilling a quiet, devoted spiritual life can be. And when I'm in Anchoress mode, it's like I have the ability to regulate my party lifestyle for my own good, to go to bed on time, to get very clear about what it is I'm eating, what is the next right action, slow living, getting the self-care routine where it needs to be. And of course, those are things I just do anyway, but the Anchoress part of me is maybe an extreme version of that, you know? And the shadow of going into my Anchoress part is that I go into emergency retreat sometimes when I feel like I've overdone it or when my mental health symptoms are playing up, rather than like just not overdoing it in the first place or making sure that I take care of my symptoms better in the first place. I will not do that and then go into retreat mode and like stop talking to everyone for a week and just get really fucking serious about being here and being in meditation. And I think it just doesn't need to be as extreme as that, you know? I think I also can end up going into emergency anchoress mode when I actually I'm trying to avoid some issues that I need to deal with. And I'll suddenly be like, oh, what a shame, I can't deal with those issues. I need to like meditate for a week straight. I've got this whole like system of daily ritual, and I turn my phone off for like 8 hours a day, and it's like, honey, you just need to deal with like that paperwork or have that hard conversation with someone. There's no need for all this. This is too many bells and whistles now, you know. I think that the anchoress part of me is the part of me that tells myself that the outside world is the issue rather than the way that I'm operating in the outside world. So it's cutting off from the world and kind of demonizing the world as the problem, you know? And I think the anchoress is all or nothing. She's a very black and white part of me. She is a feast or famine part of me rather than moderation. So she will just be like, cut everything off, stop everything, turn all the lights off, just, you've got to get right with God. And it's like, no, you don't really. It's not a shame thing. It's just a very extreme desire to feel that pendulum swing in the opposite direction, but it's too far. You know, when it's in shadow, it's too far. I think I sometimes use the instinct towards simplicity as an excuse to slip into self-deprivation as well and be too strict with myself about things like fun foods, for example, high sugar foods, fun times, lollygagging, taking pointless breaks. When I'm in shadow anchoress mode, I'm like, no, very rigid, very regimented, very like no sugar, no, like, get up, you're not lying in, you're not watching that movie. And so it can be kind of like not fun. So I like anchoress mode because what witch wouldn't? Every witch wants to have that part of them that is like, right, the altar's set up, I'm going to do this, this and this, I'm going to do some cauldron work, I'm going to get really fucking into this, I'm going to do this all night long. So everybody wants that inner anchoress for that motivation. But when the inner anchoress is like, you're not having that cookie because it's not spiritual, and you're not doing this because it's not spiritual, and you're not allowed to just watch this fun thing on YouTube, that's where she's gotten out of hand, and she needs to take several fucking seats. Like, she's really being a drag. I have a Supreme Court justice in my psyche, and it was my therapist that identified this. I kind of identified it. I said, like, you know, I've got this revolutionary in me, I've got this crusader, I've got this kind of Joan of Arc part of me that comes through. But it was my therapist that actually named it the Supreme Court justice, and I think she's the one that identified that it's more about me feeling like I know what is just and right and fair, and I'm the one that needs to mete out that justice in some way, or I'm very, very angry if I can't mete it out, you know? And she's right. She's very often right about me. I'm just going to say. So yeah, the Supreme Court justice. This part of me, when it's operating in the conscious side, in the light side, is awesome. It's the part of me that can't stand injustice. It's the part of me that wants to help people receive justice. It's the part of me that wants to address imbalances and unfairnesses in the world, in my life, in the lives of my friends, and more collectively in a social justice way and in an environmental way. It's the part of me that is infuriated to see people being stamped on and being deprived while other people live in luxury. It's the part of me that really wants to see things work out okay for people. It's the part of me that understands that when you're punitive towards a bunch of people who are already working with limited resources and therefore maybe acting out socially, you just give them more of a reason to act out. It doesn't show love, it doesn't show compassion, and it adds to a cyclical problem. So all of these things are part of what I would call my Supreme Court justice, that part of me inside. And to be honest with you, I don't really want to call it Supreme Court justice anymore, because like the Supreme Court justice is a fucking disaster a lot of the time, to be honest. But it's my judge. Let's call it my inner judge. And for me as a judge, like if I was on the Supreme Court, I'd be trying to do that Ruth Bader Ginsburg shit, okay? So when my Supreme Court justice is consciously operating, it can be amazing. It can be my motivation for doing something good for myself or others. It can be my way that I actually feel some sense that I'm a part of this reality and something is my responsibility to change or to deal with or to help with or to uncover. When my Supreme Court justice is in shadow, I think I'm the one that needs to mete out justice. And I also am highly disturbed if I can't do that. I get very, very angry to the point of distraction about things that I feel like I have no way of changing. I also find it extremely difficult to get over an injustice that I feel was done to me, even if on paper, objectively, it's only very slight, really, in the scheme of things. There's an angry judge in me. There's a infuriated Supreme Court justice that will not let the lost cases go, that sits awake at night and fucking like picks themselves and goes, oh, I hate that that's happened, you know? So there's definitely this part of me that finds it very, very slow to process things that I feel were unfairly done to me or said to me, especially when I really can't see in the entire timeline of my relationship with someone any excuse for them to treat me that way. It does a number on me, you know, and I think some of that does just come from ego. Like, what right have I really to find that everybody always treats me flawlessly? That's not how life works. Everyone has a bad day. I mean, sure, I need my inner Supreme Court judge to tell me when it's not okay for someone to consistently overstep my boundaries or be abusive towards me. But sometimes my Supreme Court judge can be very intense when someone is just having a shit day and they've just kind of like spoken to me a bit meanly. When my Supreme Court judge is in shadow, she will go, no, absolutely not. Electric chair, never talking to you again. Get out of my life. Take your shit with you. Take him down. Take him down. That kind of shit. And that's over the top. That's over the top. I can't expect people to have a perfect score of treating me justly and fairly and nicely all the time. So she can get a little bit, you know, what's the word? Hyper aroused, my Supreme Court judge, for sure. I do have a few other parts of myself. I'm not going to go into them all because, like I said, this video could get really, really much longer than it already is. I just want to talk about one more part of me that I have mentioned on the channel before. I call her Dizzy Mc Woowoo, and I have a very special relationship with her. This is another part of me that I've been working with since like 2014. She's the part of me that is playful and imaginative and childlike and escapist. She has one foot in the street and one foot in the Milky Way, to steal a quote from Patti Smith. She seeks escapism in activities and mindsets that other people might consider childish, immature, or unacceptable. Dizzy Mc Woowoo is the part of me that just wants to walk to the swings in the middle of the night and talk to someone. She's the part of me that wants to collect different kids' toys or, you know, have different sweets from the past that I like. Dizzy Mc Woowoo is the part of me that like collects things and likes to make blanket forts with fairy lights. In fact, Dizzy Mc Woowoo is the part of me that literally was to the front every single time I bought a set of fairy lights for my flat. By the way, there are quite a few sets of fairy lights in my flat. She's the one that wants everything to feel like a den where it's just about to be story time and your imaginary friends are there, you know? I love her. She's very connected to my inner child, but she's come so strongly into adulthood that I also need to acknowledge her as a part of my adulthood. She fuels my work. She fuels my friendships. She's the part of me that accepts when other people are feeling silly or playful or escapist or whatever, or just a bit weird, just a bit kooky. But Dizzy Mc Woowoo has a massive shadow side, you know. She struggles with real life. Dizzy Mc Woowoo is the part of me that doesn't want deadlines or official paperwork or responsibilities or time-sensitive duties. The stuff that makes me an adult. Dizzy Mc Woowoo is not about that motherfucking life. She is so over that. She wants to have a bubble bath and watch SpongeBob SquarePants. She is so fed up with this fucking... She doesn't want to take the bins down anymore. And she doesn't want to feel like she fucking really low-key hates herself a little bit when she forgets to put the bloody bins out. That is just really like a drag to her. She also sometimes avoids the consequences of making mistakes or missing a deadline or whatever. She avoids hard conversations as well. Dizzy Mc Woowoo is the part of me that likes to just step away for a few weeks when things go wonky in my relationships because I really just don't want to deal with it sometimes. She's the part of me that has difficulty accepting when there are difficulties in my relationships. Essentially, I just want everyone to love each other and get on, and I want us all to have a good time. And sometimes when I need to address something with someone, Dizzy Mc Woowoo goes into shadow and is like, no, that doesn't feel like the good, usual, fluffy, playful feeling that we get when we talk to that person. So we're just going to like ignore that. Ignore that. Let's go and find our fluffy, playful people. And I have to really, really combat that because it will make me not address something with someone who's upset me or who I've upset or we've got a bit of tension between us. It will literally make me just switch off. And it was only recently that my therapist alerted me to the fact that that is Dizzy Mc Woowoo. You know, that Dizzy Mc Woowoo is not only that bit of me that wants to like fuck off deadlines and just not be an adult, but she's also the part of me that wants to just avoid anything that feels hard and complex. And sometimes there is that part of me that is like that, you know. It's almost an exasperated part of me, like, oh, I've had too much of that already. That's been my whole life. Can't we just not argue? Can't we just not misunderstand each other? And I have to really deal with that part of me when it comes up, because that's definitely not myself. I believe in the hard conversations. I believe in spending the time and giving the focus and being dedicated to being honest when things aren't going right, or when one or the other of us is upset. I don't want to ignore that. But Dizzy Mc Woowoo does, okay? She does. And she doesn't want to be a real grown-up. She desires to be rescued, actually, sometimes by someone who is seemingly a lot more capable than her. But you know what? We move in this world, and I have so far not sought someone who can rescue me from adulthood. I'm trying to boss it as well as I can, all right? With my sparkly little thing with my lime juice in it, which Dizzy Mc Woowoo bought for me. Thank you, Dizzy. Okay, those are my parts, my loves. Let me know, what did you think of this video? Some of you are just going to find it super weird and a little bit uncomfortable. If that's the case, why the fuck are you here at this timestamp? Why didn't you just like click off? There's loads of other shit to watch on YouTube. Like, why? Why are you torturing yourself? Maybe that's one of your parts. You should find out which one it is. Give it a name, work with it, because it's in shadow. But if you are interested in internal family systems, or working with your parts, or seeing yourself as a collection of archetypal shards that are to one degree or another in control at one time or another, get at me down below and let me know what's going on with you. What are your parts all about? Please don't forget to check out Skillshare. Go to the link in the description and go over and get yourself a free monthly trial and see what you think. See if you want to stay on for another month and pay the affordable price to keep getting that content, or not, but try it out in any regard, and it helps the channel when you do that. Darlings, thank you so much for letting me take you on this tour. It's been really an intriguing thing to break down. If you want to work with me one-on-one and talk about your part or your experiences in life, or what is going on for you, or you want me to sling cards for you, or you want to do some witchcraft mentoring with me, I am available. I have slots that you can book. My schedule is now open all the way through September. The October dates, well, for the rest of August and all the way through September. There are still dates in August at the time of uploading. The October dates will come out at the beginning of September. Come and work with me. Come and be a client, you know, as a one-off experience, or indeed you can book a package if you want some ongoing accountability. Thank you so much for watching. Much love, my darlings, and stay safe and keep it rebellious, and blessed be.